Let's do it. Let's.
Well, good morning. My name is Heather Clarke-Peckerman, and I'm the CEO of Strategy. It's a pleasure to bring you this webinar today, The Self-Aware Leader. Before we get started, I just want to share a little bit of who I am with you. I am a mother. I have two children. I live in a beautiful place in Colorado. I am very fortunate to be in a profession that I'm very passionate about, and I have the ability to impact leaders as well as the organization. And I'm also very passionate about missions, both global and local, specifically working in third world countries, being able to build wells and working with the homeless. So that's just a little bit about who I am and what drives me and helps me be more passionate as a leader. What I'm going to be sharing with you today is emotional intelligence, and I use this both professionally as well as personally, especially with dealing with teenagers. So with that, let me give you a little bit of an overview of what specifically we're going to be covering in the next half an hour. You know, emotional intelligence, we spoke about it a little bit last month when I gave a high-level overview about what it is. And just to refresh your memory, it was about executives and leaders tend to be higher in emotional intelligence because they need to be more aware of the entire system and how to engage people both upstream and downstream. We also learned that as you age, emotional intelligence gets higher because of experience. And then we also saw that emotional intelligence is higher in women because we are groomed that way, but also we're programmed differently. But everybody can experience high levels of emotional intelligence. So today, our purpose is to really start with the very first two dimensions. And by understanding your own emotions, or understanding your feelings, I should say, and being able to help others understand their emotions, you're going to gain more respect, because when you can manage your emotions, you can manage a situation. And what people need, your staff or even your own family members, what they need is consistency, because consistency builds trust, and trust will build any team. And then once you have that trust in place, you can take your team anywhere you need to take them. You'll be able to read others. Understanding dimension number two is you can walk into a room and you might see or sense that something has taken place, and what you're looking for is qualifiers. How do I know what I'm feeling really happened? What am I sensing? What am I picking up through other people's body language? And where I'm going to share with you a little formula of how can you start to understand what other people's emotions are. We understand what ours are or how we're feeling, but how do you start to really detect that in other people? And then most importantly, we're going to be laying the groundwork of how do we start to become more aware of who we are, our emotions, why we're feeling this way, so that we can manage ourselves in difficult situations, so we don't become what we call emotionally hijacked. And emotionally hijacked is when something happens and it causes you to feel really angry, really frustrated, very upset. And sometimes those emotions are so strong that we can't even manage it. I don't know if you've ever had a situation where you say, oh my goodness, I wish I would have reacted differently, or I wish I didn't send that email, right? That's an example of becoming emotionally hijacked, where you literally cannot think straight. And so what we talk about in emotional intelligence is that pause. When you can identify that feeling coming on and it's coming on strong, how do we take that pause so that we can show up as the leader, as the person we want to be, so that we don't have to have a regret and go, oh my goodness, I wish I never responded that way. Or now look at the mess I have, and I have to do a lot of backtracking. I have a lot of damage that I need to manage. So that's what we're going to cover today. I know it seems like a lot. The format for today is we're going to have 40 minutes total. So our presentation is going to be about 30 minutes, give or take a few minutes. And then I'm going to open it up for Q&A. And what I would like you to do, if you have questions, you will notice on the right-hand side there is a panel. and you can ask me questions, and I will address them at the end. So throughout the presentation, you will be on mute, but go ahead and use that feature if you'd like to. If you have a specific situation that I can help you answer and address towards the end. Okay, so let's jump right in. My style is I have a lot of energy. I love to share information, and most importantly, I want this to be the most beneficial for you at the end of the day so that you have something that you can immediately implement either on the business front or the home front or any other capacity that you find yourself in. So with that, what is emotional intelligence? It's been around for quite a while. It's a well-known term. Basically, when we look at emotional intelligence, it gives us the capacity for 4 areas. One is being able to perceive situations not only from our perception, but being able to understand where other people may be coming from. And I'm going to share with you a perception model in just a few slides to really illustrate that point. The other piece is, how do I express myself? How do I share my feelings of what's working or what's not working? And how do I encourage other people to express their own feelings, their emotions, especially if we have staff that tend to be very reserved and very quiet, but you can tell that something might not be right, that they're frustrated. Well, how do we help them be able to articulate that? And that's really dimension 1, number 2, that we're going to be focusing on today. And then the third one is looking at understanding. How do I understand where my own emotions are coming from? Especially if it's a negative or very strong emotion, where is this coming from? And I'd go back to perception, okay? Understanding where it may be coming from, and do I need to change what I'm focusing on? Do I need to change my perception to understand the actions of others? You know, it's interesting. We judge ourselves based on our own intent, and yet we judge others based on what we see, right? Their actions. So it's interesting, if we learn to judge or perceive others' actions as being a positive intent, right? Always assume positive intent. That's going to release a lot of negative emotions or assumptions we may have about others. And finally, the fourth one is looking at, sorry, I'm having a little problem with this, manage. How do we manage our emotions on a day-to-day basis, a baseline? And we're always looking for a baseline of how somebody interacts. What's their average disposition? What's their average attitude like? And then we can notice when it's off, when something doesn't seem right. So that's a high-level overview of the 4 different areas we're going to be looking at specifically throughout this emotional intelligence series. So let me give you an overview of what are the 7 different dimensions. The model that I use comes from a company called Genos, and the first 2 are recognizing and expressing emotions, not only from yourself but others, and then how do I understand? And this is where body language comes in with dimension number 2. And then next month in June, we're going to be focusing on how do we make decisions, emotionally intelligent decisions. How do I help my team make emotionally intelligent decisions? And then in July, we're going to be looking at managing emotions, both self and others. And this is where that pause comes in. This is that proactive piece. And then 6 and 7 is controlling emotions, myself as well as others. And this is the reactive piece. This is when situations are heightened, that you're really feeling very frustrated, it's more of a negative emotion that you're feeling, and yet there's a lot at stake. How do I maintain my composure? And that's critical to emotional intelligence. And the more that you can understand how you're thinking, how you're feeling, where it's coming from, the more successful you'll be in emotional intelligence. So it's not to say that what you're thinking or feeling is wrong. It's just, how do I manage that? And is it accurate based on everything else that I'm seeing? And is it serving me? You know, if you are going through life and everything is working well for you, you don't find yourself in stressful situations, you find that you can quickly reframe, that you tend to come from a place of seeking to understand rather than being understood, then I'd say excellent. Continue to do what you're doing because you're already very high in emotional intelligence. It's only when there's different areas in your life that are not serving you anymore, that are not producing the results, the relationships, the respect or the collaboration. At that point, I'd say, okay, well, now you have an opportunity. And that's what life is, right? It gives us many opportunities to find out what is working really well and what is not. So today, when we're looking at emotional intelligence, dimensions 1 and 2, I'd like you to be thinking through, where are you strong in recognizing your emotions, right? And how would that help you if you were able to bring that into different aspects of your life? You know, managers that are very aware of their own emotions and dimension number 1 have no problem expressing themselves at all. But then we look at dimension number 2 when we do a 360 assessment with them. They are so outwardly spoken and don't have a problem expressing themselves, but are they overshadowing other people? Are they picking up clues from others that maybe their style is not working so well? So I shared with you that I was going to talk to you about the perceptions. And last month we hit on this, we addressed this, which was the EI perception, which is the iceberg model. And if you see underneath the bottom and it says EQ, okay, emotional intelligence, your emotional quotient, that's what that stands for. Well, underneath the iceberg are things like beliefs. What do you believe? Why do you believe them? Where do those beliefs come from? What are your motives, right? What was your upbringing? Where were you raised? What country were you raised? Who raised you, right? That all creates our perception, creates our world around us of what's right and what's not right. That's our filter. We also look at things under the culture. And then we look at values as well as experience. So all of this is what we call it underneath the surface. It's about 80%. And yet, as managers and leaders, what do we usually notice about other people? Well, we tend to be rational when we're leading, right? And we look for things to confirm or discount what we already believe, right, underneath the surface. So the 20% above border are things like, well, we look at people's results. And based on those results, we then make an assumption, don't we? We make assumption based on our own beliefs, our own values of, did they do it right? Do we think that they take a lot of initiative? Do we feel that they care about what they do? Those are all the perceptions we bring when we look at somebody's results. We also can see the way somebody's dressed. Research says that you have 7 to 10 seconds before somebody forms an impression of you. So they quickly look from head to toe what you're wearing, and then they bring that underneath the surface. They evaluate that, and they'll make a conclusion just based on the way you are dressed. It doesn't seem fair, but it is. It's reality. It's there. It's a perception. So it's, how do I give the right perception? But also when I'm viewing others, how do I make sure that it's more than just their dress? And it's more about what other things about them will confirm what I am feeling about them. Finally, attitude. You know, somebody comes into work where you say, I love working with that person. They've got such a positive attitude. Or that person's energy, it's really low. They're very negative, right? That can be very draining. And if you're a high energy person and you're working with a low energy person and you're going into a brainstorming meeting because you came up with this fantastic idea that's going to take your company to the next level, and this naysayer constantly is, it's never going to work, it's never going to work, we've always done it that way, right? That just so you know, it can hit one of your triggers, right? One of your emotions, like, oh, here we go again, they always do this, right? And then we can get emotionally hijacked. So it's being aware of how other people's attitude can impact yours, and how do you manage that when that starts to happen. We also read other people's body language. That's dimension number 2. What could it mean? Body language sometimes can trip you up. It's not always what it seems. So we learn to take the dive, and taking the dive means we go below the water and start asking questions. If somebody's arms are crossed and they look frustrated, well, what else can it mean? What's going on? They could be cold. They could be comfortable, right? And then finally, habits. We get to witness people's habits, and then we make assumptions, usually about how they were raised or not raised. So this is just a little overview of understanding how emotional intelligence and your IQ impact all the different factors that we incorporate throughout our day. And emotional intelligence, the most important thing is you need to be aware of it. It has to be on the forefront. I shared last month, I've been working with emotional intelligence for over 10 years now, about 11 years. And even though I love it and I'm passionate about it, I always need to be very aware of it, especially more on the home front than the professional front, because at home, these are the people that love and care about you, and you let your guard down. Well, am I making the impact with my family the same way I am with my clients? So I have to continually be aware of how I'm showing up for them. And you too have an area in your life where you're stronger or weaker when it comes to emotional intelligence. So always focus on what's the most important message that you want to be delivering, and how do you need to think differently about it, or how do I need to react differently? So when we're looking at emotional intelligence, what we're focused on is right here, this blind spot. And when we do a 360, we find out of the 7 dimensions that I just shared with you, which ones are your strong ones, as well as where's the opportunity to learn and grow. As we go through the rest of this presentation this morning, I want you to be thinking about, is there a blind spot that's been identified for you? And if so, now it's been brought to your attention, so you're no longer blind about it. You're aware. And then what steps can you take? Small steps to get a big difference at the end. Because in the end of the day, that's what's important. That's why we do emotional intelligence. It's not just to have another activity to do, because we're all already overworked. It's about how to work with people more effectively so that I don't have to have this stress. I don't have to bring this home with me. I don't have to stay up at night. Right? It's 2-degree shift, doing something different that's going to give me a much more positive result than I had before. And then that becomes your motivation. That becomes your motivator to say, yes, I'm going to show up for myself. I'm going to show up for my company. I'm going to show up for my team. And I'm going to actively seek to do things differently because the benefit outweighs the current situation. Okay. So with that, let's go in more specifically at looking at dimension number 1. For those of you that may have a notepad, feel free to write some of this down. Here's 2 questions I'm going to share with you that we start to look at when we want to recognize and understand our own emotions. Okay. The first one is, what am I feeling about this? And most importantly, why am I feeling this way? What are the consequences if I continue to feel this way? What I mean by that last question, what are the consequences? In emotional intelligence, we always are focused on our outcome. What is it that I need to be doing or want to do? What is the goal? And then we back that up by, if that's really my goal, I want to have a really good relationship with my team or with a specific person. And right now, maybe I don't get along with them, and there's a lot of tension, and there's been a lot of water underneath the surface, right? We've had difficult interactions. Well, if I really I need this person on my team, I really need to learn how to work better with them, well, then I need to back it up and think differently about them, or most importantly, I need to act differently. And when I act differently, it creates a different ripple effect. They're going to continue to be who they are, but I'm going to change. I'm going to do that 2-degree shift so that they don't impact my ability to be successful. This takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of patience. And I'm not going to say that it's easy, because it's not. When we have interactions with other people that have been difficult, and we obviously have contributed to them too, and you say enough is enough, I don't want this anymore, then it's taking that step back and say, I'm going to change regardless of what they do. And they will test you. I promise you, they will test you. But it's keep doing it, because every time you respond the way you want, it's going to force them to respond differently, because they now know that they can't interact with you the same way, right? Your baseline now has changed. and that over time will change the way they interact. So it's showing up and treating them as if you already have a great relationship. The second question is, how effectively am I expressing myself to others, verbally and non-verbally? This one shows up in email a lot. When we're in a face-to-face interaction, we have the ability to see other people. We can see their body language, which gives us a lot of indication of what may be going on. Are they looking at us? Is their eye contact looking away from us? Are their arms crossed? Is their body physically turned away from us, which is now creating a barrier? They're kind of like looking over their shoulder, right? That's all a barrier. That's all information. Become really aware. Your next meeting after you get off this phone, your next meeting today or tomorrow, whenever you have it, go in and be observant. Just be aware. Sit back and start to look at your colleagues' body language. What do you think is going on? Now, are they engaged or not engaged? Are they in alignment with what the leader is saying? Right? The body language will start to indicate that. Okay, so with that, let me share with you more specifically. If you came out high on a 360 EI, and let's say your number one dimension was high, that would tell us that you easily can talk about your feelings or any issue. Right? You're very verbal, you're expressive, which is a positive thing. Right? Colleagues can easily read you. You have nothing up your sleeves because you're so transparent. You're very articulate. You tend to be able to address any situation. Now, here's the downside, right? With having a high score, you can be dramatic and not self-aware. So each one of these dimensions if overused, can be our Achilles heel. But being high and recognizing and expressing emotions for yourself can be very positive, especially as a leader, right? The more open and transparent you can be, the more followership you can be. But it's learning how and when to speak, and first learning to seek to understand other people, especially as a leader, your team. You want to ask them first what's going on before you speak, because a lot of times what happens is when we are leaders and we go and we say, this is the problem, this is what I think is going on, well, the rest of the group now just became quiet, and they're going to mirror and mimic everything you just said, because they want to align themselves with you. They don't want to be perceived as being wrong. So first go in and say, what do you think, what are the causes of this problem? What are your thoughts? How can we improve it? Pull from them, and then you can always come back with your thoughts. Okay. All right, here's this model that I've been sharing with you as I've been going over dimensions 1 and 2. This is the EI model, and what we always want to concentrate on is this outcome piece. Okay, what is my goal? What do I want to happen? And in order for that to happen, how do I have to react or respond differently? Or better yet, can I come all the way back here and think differently about it? Once I think differently, it's going to create a different emotion, a different feeling, which will cause me to respond differently, and then it will give me the outcome I want. Last month, for those of you that were on the call, I said, start thinking about what your triggers are. And here is where the game changes, right here, under feeling. Be able to identify what are my triggers, right? What are my number one triggers? So think about when you get frustrated or angry or demotivated at work. What is causing that? What is happening? What's a trigger? Because we all get triggered. And in order to be able to have the outcome you've always want, you have to manage these feelings when they come up, especially if there's people in our organization we might not respect. We might not feel that they're a team player, or like I said earlier, maybe we've had an interaction with them that hasn't been positive. But the real game changes, especially around this feeling. You have so much control, and by changing your physiology, you can easily change your thought, which will change the reaction and give you a different outcome. I'm going to be very transparent this morning, and I'm going to tell you how this model worked for me this morning. For the last 3 weeks, I'm in Colorado, and it's been unseasonably wet. We usually don't have this much rain, and after a while, it feels feels depressing. It's like it's always raining and it's hard to get out. So this morning I woke up yet to another day full of rain, pouring this morning. And my first thought was, oh, not another day, right? And then what did I start to feel? I started to feel low energy. Well, I know that I'm giving this webinar and my outcome is people are giving me their time, and that's a precious gift. And in order for them to get the most of me, I need to be energetic and I need to be on. And so what I quickly did was I just changed the thought. Yep, it's another rainy day. And what's the thought? Great. Now we don't ever have to worry about a drought right now. Not ever worry about it, but right now we don't have to worry about a drought. Right? So this can be a positive thing. But more importantly than even the thought, it's the feeling piece. And you can change your physiology like that. And all you have to do is stand up, move. I love music. You know, for those of you that get on early to the webinars, I'm always playing upbeat music. And then I just exercised. I just did about 15 minutes of exercise just to get my energy up and change it. Well, what's the reaction? Now I have energy. Now I feel the passion and I feel super charged up to be on this call today. Well, what's the outcome? Now you're hearing that passion. So you, in any situation, if you're starting to feel that, you know, you're feeling sluggish, you're feeling that you're losing focus, that you're not really sure what the meaning is and why you're doing things, physically get up, change your physiology, which will trigger a different thought, which will trigger a different reaction. That's just a simple fix. If you can't get to the thinking piece, then physically change yourself. Right. So let's look at the second piece, which is what we're here to talk about today, which is understanding others' emotions. We just covered ourselves, like how do I start to identify why I'm feeling what I'm feeling? Well, now how do I start to pick up on other people? How do I start to understand what may be going on with them? So I'm going to ask a couple questions in my mind. What are they feeling? Well, how do I know what they're feeling? Well, I'm going to seek to understand. And I can ask an open-ended question by, what's going on? How are things going? What opportunities have you noticed, right? Whatever questions will elicit an open-ended, or you could say, I noticed that you don't seem to be yourself today. What's going on? Rather than saying, are you okay, which is closed, and they'll say, sure, I'm okay. You know, what's going on? What's changed? What are the underlying causes? And what impact am I having? So those that are high in dimension number 2 have a really great ability to do this. A lot of times people with this ability, you will, let's say on a daily basis, you may see them in your work environment, and one day you're just not feeling good. Maybe there's something personally going on or even professionally, and you're trying to fake it, right? You're trying to act like, you know, everything's good. And this person comes up and they say, hey, how you doing today? And you're like, fine. And they will stop and they say, what's going on? Intuitively, they know just by the tone of your voice or your body language, something was different, which triggered to them that said, you're not okay. Or they're really good about going in and they can read a room. They're exceptional at this. They may walk in halfway into a meeting and they can just tell the pulse of the room. It's tense. They can feel the stress in the air. But what are they doing? How do they know that? Well, they're picking up on the energy. They're picking up on people's body language. They're picking up on the lack of eye contact or just the tone of people's voice. You know, they really look at the communication dynamics, which is our words only make up 7% of what we communicate. And then we have our tone of voice that makes up 38%. And then our body language makes up 55% of what we communicate. So those with a high dimension number 2 are really good at picking up on those 3 factors, the words, the tone of voice, and the body language, but specifically the body language. You'll see at the bottom here, there are some pictures, 6 different pictures of a gentleman, different expressions. And I'm going to encourage you to start to pick up, you know, the first 3, you'll notice it's a smile, but all 3 of them have a different meaning. Now, if you look at this, well, is that really being sincere? I would read that as no, that's just somebody like, maybe yesing you to death. Yeah, I'm not really going to do what you want. I'm just going to smile at you and nod my head, but I'm not doing that. So I would explore that a little bit more. And the reason why, you can look at the tensions in his face. This here is looking at someone who definitely seems like they're aligned. You know, you can even look at the different of the head posture. I mean, there's a lot of information, and you don't have to be an expert in body language. Just want to teach you a few little key things to look for. And then this one, really, really genuine, someone who's laughing and enjoying what they want. Same thing with down here. A lot of times when people see a frown, they just automatically think that the person's is not in agreement with them. Well, this one is more like contemplated. Maybe they don't understand. You know, this could be, I'm not in agreement with you, or if they're a logical thinker, they are processing and they look like they're frustrated, but they're really just trying to understand new information that's being brought in. And then this one is usually more disgruntled, very frustrated with you. So what we don't see is where their arms are they crossed? Are they facing you or not facing you? That also gives us more of an indication as well. So start to be observant. All right. And then finally, as we get to the end here, what I'd like you to be thinking about, as we just reiterate these for a minute, can tell if others agree with you, pay attention to others, and be inclusive and empathetic. All right. So finally, what I want you to be thinking of is on a scale of 1 to 10. As a coach, I always love to get a barometer, 10 being you're fully aware. Answer these questions here. Number 1 is, today, right, how aware are you of your feelings on a daily basis? 1 to 10. 1, not at all. 10, I'm very aware. For those of you that scored anything from a 7 below, your task for today, if you want to take it on, is to start to become aware. Am I happy? Am I frustrated? Am I just, kind of even keel? Nothing's really going on. 2 times today, I want you to, whether it's a meeting or a conversation, just to become aware of how am I feeling in this given situation. Now, why do we become so aware of it? Is because when I'm aware of how I'm feeling, if I'm starting to get frustrated, now I can manage myself. But if I'm unaware of it and that frustration builds, but I'm not cognizant of it, I can easily get triggered. Right? And even if I don't verbally express myself and I'm frustrated, it's going to come out where I'm going to lose time. I'm going to lose stress. I'm going to lose time because I'm stressed and I'm thinking about it. And if I'm low and expressive, I'm not going to go and ask that person. I'm going to make up this big assumption of what they're doing, what they're not doing. I wasn't CC'd on that email. They must not like me anymore. Then I'm going to go down this whole drama path, which takes energy. It takes time. And most of the time, it's not about you. Right? And this happens all the time. So the more aware you can be, the better you'll manage that for yourself. And you'll have more to bring to the table rather than constantly being stressed at work. The second one, again, scale of 1 to 10, how often are you aware of other people's feelings on a daily basis? So the next conversation you have after this call, just kind of start to gauge. Look at their body language and don't be weird about it. Right? Don't be gawking at them, but just start to kind of take it in and what could be going on with them. Just start to get a baseline on that person. And then finally, how aware are you of the perceptions others have of you? This is critical as a leader. Right? Am I leading? Do I have the reputation that I want? If I do not, then I need to go back and recreate that. That's what a 360 will do. It will tell you overall how high or low you are in any of the different dimensions. But we take that and we look and we say, okay, is this the perception? Is this perception accurate of who you are? And if it's not, okay, let's do the tweaking. A couple of degrees here and there. And then you'll wind up being the leader and having the perception, or others will have the perception of you that you want. All right, so this brings us to the end. What I'd like to leave you with as we think about dimensions 1 and 2 is perception is your reality. So be aware of your words, your tone of voice, and your body language, but also be aware of others and what it could be communicating. Acknowledge and validate to understand others. This doesn't mean you agree. It means it's understandable somebody in your situation would feel that way. Now, I'm not saying I agree. I'm just saying I understand. That's dimension 2. And you build a lot of camaraderie with that. You build a lot of respect. But also, if you're inaccurate in what you're seeing, they will correct that for you. And then third, react in a way that is going to get you what you want. The EI the EI model. So with that, I want to thank you for your time today, this past 35 minutes. If you liked what you heard and you want to continue on, we will be running the EI series all the way through August. You can like us on Facebook. You can connect with me personally on LinkedIn or Strategy. We have a website where you can see all our upcoming webinars and register for them. And if you like business insights around leading, we also have our Insights quarterly newsletter as well as a blog. So this is going to conclude our webinar. I'm going to look to see what questions may have come in. For those of you that have to jump off, thank you so much for your time today. And my promise to you is that I will be emailing you this recorded webinar. So let me go to questions real quick. Okay, we had 2 that came in. Okay, so the first one, how do I start to identify what I am feeling? So this one came in the beginning, and hopefully what I shared with you, it makes a lot more sense now, but just to help you understand more is, in order to start to identify how you're feeling, is just start to be aware of it, that assignment or that opportunity, as I like to say, this next meeting, this next phone call you're going to be in, just be sitting there and just be in your own body. How am I feeling? How am I thinking? Is this a waste of time? Is this the best meeting I ever had? Where are my thoughts? Why am I frustrated? Why am I in agreement? Right? It's going underneath the surface, right? That iceberg, into your own feelings. What is triggering it, or what is making you feel positive or less positive towards it? And then the second one is, why are feelings so important to be aware of in the workplace? This is another great question. This will all make even more sense when we get to dimension number 6 and 7, which is controlling our emotions. It's easy on a day-to-day basis to kind of go through the day, not really being aware of what we're thinking or what we're feeling, but it becomes extremely important when we are in very high stress situations. How do I maintain my composure? If I haven't started to get in that habit and become aware of it, I will never be able to manage myself. And I can never manage others until I manage myself. And why this is important is because I don't know if you've ever had a manager where, for the most part, they were always okay, right? They were just pretty even keeled. But what would happen is, when they would get angry or frustrated, they would fly off the handle. The saying that we use a lot is, they're a bull in a china shop, and everybody's ducking and running. Well, maybe that's only 10% of the time. But that 10% of the time, when a leader acts like that, it destroys the confidence, the respect, but also the trust. And so even if 90% of the time that leader manages themselves pretty well, and they're usually a pretty decent person, what happens is people can't trust them. And that will be the breakdown of any team, of any organization. And after a while, that will get wearing on people. And people don't leave organizations. They leave managers. They join organizations because they believe in the vision and the mission, but they leave because of managers most of the time. Not 100%, but pretty close. All right. So this gives us a lot of opportunity to start practicing, how am I responding? And most importantly, how do my actions influence the people around me? How do they impact my ability to move up in the organization, to be seen as a leader, to get that promotion? Am I seen as an inhibitor that's not helping the organization, or am I really good at people? I really get them. I really understand them. So that's why that's so important for you to start to be aware of that. With that, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you being on the call, and most importantly, I hope this was valuable to you. Hope to see you next month. Have a great day.